Hey guys, Kaz here, and today I'm doing a video that I've seen on a couple of different people's channels, and it's the if I could only choose one book, then which one would I choose? The basic premise is you take some of your fave authors and you have to whittle it down to a single book that you would choose if all the other books in the world by that author ceased to exist. So first of all, the original concept of this is by Andie Is Reading Probably. Could we all please get back into the habit of actually acknowledging where tags and challenges come from, please? Because, you know, as someone that has a few tags that I've created, it's kind of disheartening when people do it and then they don't actually say who it's by. So yes, there'll be a link down below. I wasn't tagged to do this, I've just seen a few people do it, so let me attempt to whittle my faves down to a singular book. So first of all, I'm going to start with Maggie Stiefvater. So I've not read all of Maggie Stiefvater's books, I've only read the Raven Cycle and the Shiver series, but I definitely see her as one of my favourite authors. And this is kind of hard. First of all, obviously it's going to be part of the Raven Cycle. Let's just get that straight out of there. But I'm jumping between the Dream Thieves and the Raven King, and then maybe the other ones. Because basically, I read all four of these books very, very close together, which is an anomaly for me, but I did. So I can't really remember what happened in which book. That's just a thing as well. Even if I read books with months and months between them, by the time I finish the series, it's just all one big jumble and it all goes together and I can never remember what happens in each book. But obviously I do know in this book it's very Ronan based, and there's the whole dreaming stuff and Kavinsky. And then this is obviously the end, so stuff that happened at the end probably happened in this one. And it's hard. And why have I decided to do this video? Because I'm so bad at picking. Or maybe Blue Lily Lily Blue, who knows? Is this when Pinch starts happening? Has this got that sort of stuff? I can't remember. It's all one big jumble. You know what? I love Adam and Ronan. I love seeing the backstory and stuff. But simply because I remember the specifics of this book more than the others, I think I'm going to go for the Dream Thieves, just because I know for a fact that all the dream stuff and the Kavinsky stuff and the getting to know Ronan stuff happens in this one. I think I'm going to have to go here, but it's very tentative. I need to reread this series this year, so who knows, when I reread it I might change my mind. Next up, just because I know for definite specifics, we'll go with Nora Sakovic, All for the Game author. I have read another one of her books and I give it 3 stars, but I still definitely see her as one of my favourite authors just because this is my favourite series, so obviously it kind of has to count. And the last book in the series is obviously where I'm going with this. The Kingsman. Just everything happens in here. There's some great quotes, there's some great everything. It's crazy, it's a lot. You get pretty much the best of all the world in here. You get all the Exy games. I love Exy. I wish it was real. I might actually be a sports watcher then if it was real. You get all of Neil's past comes back the most in this book. You get all the crime stuff, the crazy dangerous stuff, the beatings and that. You get the romantic stuff as well. It happens in this last book. These 2 books has none of that, and it's bigger than the others as well. More content. Obviously I'm gonna have to go for the Kingsman. Thank you, you were amazing. If you know, you know. I can't not pick this book. Next up it's gonna be Dilemma time again, and I know I probably should have figured these out before I started the video, but I couldn't, so I have to kind of just do it here and now and force myself to. So next up is Daryn Shan, and this is hard because I own so many books by Daryn Shan. It's also hard because a lot of them I haven't read for like over 10 years. So how can I remember which one's my favourite? There's the Demon Artist series, which I haven't read. The last book came out in 2009, so I haven't read them since then. I reread the first book, but not the rest yet. Then I'm kind of leaning towards the Saga of Daryn Shan, because it was the OG and I love it, and I read this when it came out and then I've reread the series, and I'm kind of halfway through a reread in the manga form. But also I'm kind of leaning towards maybe I should pick a standalone just so the whole story's there, because there's 12 books in the series and all of them are like 200 pages or less, and loads happens in each of these, but because there's 12 of them, how do you pick an individual book? And also, like I mentioned earlier, the story just blends into one for me, so I can't remember what happens in individual books. So I'm kind of half leaning towards The Thin Executioner, but again, I haven't read it. It came out in 2010, so I literally haven't read it in 10 years because I read it when it came out. I really do want to reread it though. But I'm kind of leaning towards this because it's a full contained story and I remember it being really good. So, I don't know. You know what, I'm going to go for this one, which is kind of crazy because it's a standalone, it's not one of the epic series. But, yeah, it's a full story, it's contained. It's about an executioner and then the kid wants to be the executioner but he needs to go on this journey. I'm gonna say this book that I haven't read for 10 years is my choice with Daryn Shan somehow, even though I've read more recently. But, contained story. It would annoy me if I only had one in a series and then you can't carry on the series. We're about halfway through-ish. There's 5. We're as halfway through as we can be. So, here's a little message from one of our sponsors. You know the drill. Let's jump back over to one that I know. This is how I'm doing this. I'm going, do I know? Yes I do. Do I know? Yes I do. Adam Silvera. So I've not read all of Adam Silvera's book. I've not read Infinity Son yet. I do own it. I've just not got there yet. And I know there's loads of like people with opinions about it, but I want to choose my own opinion. So I've read his other books with just him, and then obviously What If It's Us with Becky Abatali. And I'm going to choose the first book I ever read by him, More Happy Than Not. Because this book, I cried for 100 pages straight. Bearing in mind it's about 300 pages long. So for a third of this book, I cried consistently and emotionally. And when I say cried, I mean my throat hurt, my eyes were red, snotty nose, whole face drenched. Sat reading it like this and then just tears going into my ears and down here and all over everything I own. And you're probably thinking, does that mean it's a good book? Yes it does. I love to cry at a book, so therefore More Happy Than Not. But aside from the crying, it's just a really good book. I love the concept, I love the way it's done, I love this whole memory thing in here. There's a procedure that you can have where you can cut out certain memories. So if you had, for example, if somebody died or committed suicide or something, you can cut out the bit of the memory for that so you don't have the sadness. If something happened to you, if you had an injury or something, you can cut out that bit so you can't remember it. All that. It's an extremely interesting premise, and also I just loved the characters in here as well. I really should reread this, but I love it so much I kind of don't want to. Because what if I don't cry for 100 pages this time? No, I do really want to reread this, and it's definitely my favourite book. And I have cried reading all of Adam Silvera's books, but this one was the most. And last but not least, because I thought 5 was a nice little round number, this is the hardest one out of them all because I literally still haven't even decided, like, here's 2 choices, which one? So that is Andrew Smith, which should be very obvious to anybody that's been around here for a while. I love Andrew Smith. This to this is all Andrew Smith, so like how do I choose? And I'm kind of drawn towards this section. I'm kind of drawn towards these ones to choose as my specific one Andrew Smith book that I'm allowed to read ever. And it's hard. So I'm just going to go through them a little bit. So Winger, this is probably his most famous book. And I mean, if we're going for the whole crying thing, then Winger would be number 1, because there's like one sentence in here and it made me cry. I was literally sat reading it and then my mum was there and I said to her, oh, if you weren't in the room I'd probably be crying right now. And then I just instantly started crying for a long time. So even though she was in the room, I still cried. Then 100 Sideways Miles, I just remember this being really good. I haven't read it for a few years, but it's just a great book, and I love the way Andrew Smith does male friendships. It's just not something you see very often, and I'm a fan of it and I love it. It's just a great book. I should reread it. I keep saying this about all of the books in the world. Stick, it's very powerful, it's emotional, there's bad shit happens in here. I'm all about the harrowing stuff, and this book is harrowing, So do I go for the heroine book? I don't know. Again, I probably cried at this book because that's the sort of person I am. Or do I go with his most recent book, The Size of the Truth? This follows a character that's in the sequel of Winger Standoff, and I just really enjoyed it. It's a middle grade, so it's not as sweary as all of Andrew Smith's other books. So do I not pick this because it's slightly too different to the way that I love his work? But also it was a great book, and there's an armadillo that can talk and his name's Bartleby, and it's just a great time. So what do I do? What do I go for? How do I choose? I don't know. But I have to because it's kind of the aim of the game and the point of the tag. But also, how do I also love the Marbury Lens and Passenger duology, but I didn't want to pull out every single one of Andrew Smith's books to try and choose the one book that I'm allowed to read by him. What about the Alex Crow? That's a really good book as well, and it's told in multiple timelines, and then weird stuff happens. And a bunch of his other books down here I've got weird stuff, but let's stop pulling more out because we're trying to pick a specific book. Oh look, Grasshopper Jungle exists. Stop it. Shut up. So, I feel like going for Winger is too obvious because it's the only book that anybody has ever read by Andrew Smith. Potentially they've read Grasshopper Jungle, but I'm not going to go Winger just because it's too much of an obvious choice. Which is a stupid reason, but I have to whittle this down, so allow it. I'm going to say not The Size of the Truth. I bloody loved this book, but because it's middle grade and all the rest of his books are not middle grade, I want to go something more Andrew Smith. That's my specific choice. But also read this because it's great. But also read all of them because they're great. Am I making the right choice? Probably not. I'm going to not go with Stick, and I don't know why, just because I have to make a decision. This is very harrowing. Loads of crazy stuff happens. And I very much enjoyed it. You should read it. Which means apparently I'm going with 100 Sideways Miles by Andrew Smith. Imagine that. This one, it kind of has, it's like the best of both worlds of Andrew Smith, because with Andrew Smith, would you stop flying about, you stupid fly? It's kind of the best of both worlds because we have, in general, Andrew Smith does books that are kind of set in the normal world, and then books that are sci-fi and weird and got weird ass shit going on. So this is set in the real world, but then the main character's dad wrote a novel, and then the main character in that novel, it's kind of weird and trippy, and then he's got the same scar on him. So you get kind of the weirdness on here and the normalness. So I'm going for 100 Sideways Miles apparently. There you go. It's a standalone. It's about friendship and first loves and seeing the world differently. And yeah, there we go. So this is technically kind of a tag, but I'm not going to tag anyone. I'm not going to. If you want to do this, do it. If you don't, don't. But also let me know down below an author that you love and the one book that, if you could only choose one book by them, the one book that you would choose to keep forever. Let me know down below. And if this is your first video by me and you enjoy it, then please check out some of the others. And if you continue to enjoy, then please subscribe, that'd be awesome. Anyway guys, I'll see you in a few days with another video.